subtle autobiographical details. And it's an odd place to insert in this story. And it's an odd place to think about Mark's beginning, because he ends up writing the Gospel of Mark. I mean, this book that we read today that tells us about the life of Jesus and what it means to follow him and how to be a living example as a follower of Jesus. And if you think about that, his beginning, right? It's a powerful example. I'll say it this way. It's a powerful example of how your story starts isn't how it has to end, right? It doesn't have, so it's a funny story, right? He runs away, but butt naked. I like to say it that way. My mama from Louisiana. We were talking about Louisiana before service, and my mom would be like, boy, when I was little, tell us a quick story. I was little. I would just like jump out the shower and just, run to my room, and she'd be like, get out of here, you're butt naked, boy. Like all the time, she would just yell. And so anytime I read this, I just hear my mom's voice in the back of my head, like, who is the little butt naked boy running around out there? What is wrong with him? So Mark, his story starts here. But it's actually not just a funny story. It's actually a spiritual picture. Now go with me here for a second. It's a spiritual picture that all of us can actually relate to. If we're honest, we have all had moments where we too have found ourselves running away from Jesus. We've had moments we're not proud of, moments where we struggled, moments maybe in your past before you said yes to Jesus where you were running away from Jesus. And ironically, human beings, we've been running from God since the very beginning. It's just how our story started. If you think about in Genesis chapter 3, I don't have it on the screen, but just to paraphrase for a second, Genesis chapter 3 is the fall of man. Adam and Eve, they get tempted by the enemy. They partake of the fruit, and at that moment, their eyes are open. Sin is present, right? And because of that acknowledgement of sin, they recognize that they were naked, and what they do? They ran from God, and they covered themselves, and they tried to hide. What's interesting about this is that Mark's story actually happens in the Garden of Gethsemane. In Genesis chapter 3, it happens in the Garden of Eden. It's something about these gardens and something about being naked in gardens. I don't know what that whole thing is about, so just leave that there, okay? But the issue with the nakedness in the story is that it has a wide range of biblical meanings. Follow me. We're going to teach a little bit here. One of the meanings is innocence and purity. So you see in Genesis chapter 2, the Bible says that Adam and Eve were naked and they felt no shame, right? They were just chilling out in the garden, having a good time, right? Would describe God's judgment upon the people. And so the point I want to draw to us in this story is that Mark, a famous gospel writer, a man who writes about these powerful accounts of Jesus, had a humiliating start to his journey with Jesus. And we too have found ourselves in moments that we're not proud of. Moments of sin. If we're honest, we wouldn't want to tell the person on our row next to us. Moments of brokenness. Moments of loneliness or humiliation. Moments of struggling with addiction that we don't like to talk about. And it causes us to run from Jesus. But the story gets better. Hang in there. We find ourselves dealing with these issues. And what's interesting about Mark is that while he ran from Jesus, just away from him in that moment, he actually wasn't running from Jesus. He was running from the men, from the guards, which preaches to you and I here today. Because I know there's people in this room right now. Maybe it was your story in the past or it's your story now. That we find ourselves in fear of what God thinks or in fear of what man thinks. And we spend our lives dwelling on our past.